Hey everyone, welcome to Organizing Work and Tasks. This is part of our Jira for Scrum Masters course. And today's topic is going to be an interesting one because last month we talked about setting up your Jira Scrum board and kind of talked about the basics of what that Scrum board looks like. But today, now that we have this project, we're going to put things into it. Now, before we get too far, if I can get a quick mic check, I always like to just double check, make sure y'all can hear me. So if I can get a thumbs up on the emojis here, or maybe a 1 on your keyboard, put that in the chat. Just let me know that you can hear me. And that would be really, really good because I would hate to get through the whole presentation here and nobody can hear me. So if you guys can hear me, just give me a little confirmation here, and we're gonna get started. All right, so Sean, thank you so much, appreciate it. Again, I do so many of these and it always just gets me. You just never know, this microphone is so sensitive, this little touch bar here, like it's just so sensitive. And so bad, horrible design. Do not pick up a Shure, one of the new MV7 pluses. Horrible design. This should not be a touch sensitive button. Anyways, as I mentioned, organizing work and tasks, right? So we have our Jira project, we have our Scrum project, we've talked about it last month. Today, we're going to be focusing on, now that we have this project, what do we do with it? And it all starts with putting things into it. But you just can't create stories. You just can't create tasks. Because if you do that, I mean, technically you can do that, but if you do that, you're going to yield some interesting results. You're going to yield some very, very maybe unfavorable results. And so I'm going to show you how to think about your work, how to think about all the tasks that you create, and really there's some structure here, some method to the madness. Now, you might already be on your journey. You might already be well on your way into creating, and maybe you have all these stories and stuff. So I would encourage you that whenever you get an opportunity, whenever you have a chance to pivot, right, take this feedback, take this session that we're going to be covering here and fold it into your day to day, right? And fold it into just you and your team's conversations, which really, if you're following Agile, which hopefully you are because you're Scrum Masters, you should be doing some sort of retrospectives, which is a nice transition to our channel sponsor. So I wanted to take a second here to just thank Catapult Labs for making this video possible. Highly recommend that you check them out. They have a retrospectives for Jira, which again, as you are iterating through your processes and as you're trying to get better, take what we're going to learn today and run it through your next retrospective. And if you're not doing retrospectives, highly recommend you give retrospectives for Jira a try. You can set up new retrospectives very easily. This can be asynchronous, or it can be just with everybody online. And it's super easy to just pick a template and then actually run through your retrospective. You can do it what went well, what didn't go well, all the retrospective stuff. But definitely add on here into your retrospective some of the lessons from here, because these should be conversations that you have with your team, especially if you're struggling with tracking your tasks, right? If Jira is just not quite working for you, it's not the tool. I promise you, it's not the tool. It's going to be your people and your processes, and we can only get better by having those retrospectives. So again, special thank you to Catapult Labs for making this possible. And definitely check it out. Now, make sure, I'm going to skip ahead here to the bottom. We are going to have some exclusive offers. So if you read the description of the ACE event, whether you're looking at this community event here, you would have seen in the description, there's a 25% off if you are in the annual, or 3 months free for your trial here. So an extended trial, if you will, or just a free, have it for free for 3 months. So exclusive offers available down in the description, or in the description of this video, or in the course that we signed up. So go check them out. Some other disclaimers. This session is being recorded and it's going to be available on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. I don't do a whole lot of slides, so you're going to see that we're going to leave this PowerPoint very, very quickly. And so just watch the recording, make sure you're hitting those bell notifications, and then play it back a little bit slower. I tend to get a little excited about this stuff. So just if something goes way over your head, just go back and rewatch the recording. Again, make sure you subscribe to this channel because we drop so many videos here. So many videos, right? There's so much information on this channel. And we have 48 total trainings for the year of 2025. And so you're just going to want to make sure you don't miss out on any of those. In the chat too, if you want to take a second here to say hello, I would greatly appreciate it. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know, are you doing retrospectives? Where are you doing your retrospectives? What tool, what process do you use for retrospectives? I'm kind of curious to hear from that perspective. And also, Let me know if you're using epics and stories and like subtasks. Let me know your issue types. Let me know which ones you are using today, because we're going to be spending a good amount of time and talking about hierarchy and issue types and how they all relate inside of Jira. Throughout any point, ask some questions. Ask questions if you got any questions. I try to have a dedicated Q&A session, but I do have a really hard stop here in 55 minutes, so we might not get an ability to get there. So definitely drop a question if you got it, and I will be monitoring the chat here, and hopefully we can answer some of those questions. So with that said, just a little bit about me, just so that you understand who I am, what we're coming from, or what you're working with here. My name's Alex, aka Dr. Jira. I do have ACP 120, ACP 520, and I really, really got to get started on that ACP 620 soon. It's coming soon. My partner in crime is unfortunately going to be going under some surgery here, and so that kind of messes up my schedule a little bit, my timelines. But I don't want to leave him out, so I might delay it. We'll see. But anyways, ACP 120, 520. I do have a couple of engineering degrees. But more importantly, I have a YouTube channel here where if you're not subscribing, and this is now the time to subscribe. And I'm also the co-host of the Jira Life, which we will drop a link here so you can check everything out. So check out the link in the chat here, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Subscribe to the channel. Go subscribe to the Jira Life and check it out. All right. So now that we're 6 minutes into it and we got rid of all of our administrative things, again, special thanks to Catapult Labs here, you're going to be learning how to capture work in Jira. This might seem silly. You might be like, Alex, why? Why are we talking about this? Well, this is a very, very important topic, because a lot of the times when I go and engage with teams, they already have like a process, right? They already have things in Jira. But how you think about your work, how you decompose your work, how you structure your work is so important. And Jira, unlike Agile, because if you're just a pure Agilist, you're gonna have difference in opinions. And so if you've ever only just done your Agile training and never trained for Jira, there's a little disconnect here. And I'm gonna try to bridge some gaps. I'm gonna try to connect some dots on best practices and really how to leverage the power of Jira, and not even just the power of Jira, but the architecture of Jira to help you excel and have better Scrum, better sprints, better just an overall success, right? And I firmly believe that number one, you need to have a Scrum project, which we covered last month. But number two, you got to start with your best foot forward. And the best way to do that is to structure your work correctly. But again, how do you know what's correct? Well, it's hard. It's hard if you've never done these kind of training. So that's what I'm going to try to uncover for you all, and take you through that journey today and help you really think about this work. So with that said, if you have any questions in the chat, I'm going to just take a second here to scroll up. We have a couple of people using initiatives, epic, stories, and tasks. We won't talk about initiatives in detail. I will do an honorable mention of initiatives. But for those, you definitely want to check out my session next week, where I do talk about Jira Advanced Roadmaps, and we talk a lot about initiatives there. But we're going to stick to epic, stories, and tasks, or subtasks for now. The other thing is, let's see. So we have retrospectives using Microsoft Whiteboard or Mirrorboard. Okay, those are good options. Very, very good options. One thing to note, that our sponsor for this video keeps everything inside of Jira. So you never leave Jira. It's all inside of Jira. So that's an interesting thing if that's something that's a requirement for you. Frank says, in my opinion, retrospectives don't work if there's no cross interval progress tracking and focus. 100%, which is, again, why we have apps and tools that help us be more accountable. Because, yeah, having a retrospective and just noting things down, it ain't going to help anyone. You have to take action, and you have to follow up. You have to follow through, and you have to take ownership of that. Let's see. We've got a couple of other things here. More initiatives, epic, stories, tasks. So this worries me, folks. We're going to break down. I'm going to spend some time describing this. I'm going to spend time describing stories, tasks, and bugs. They're all together. This, as I have here with Frank. Sorry, Frank, not trying to bully you or call you out or anything, but we have to understand the hierarchy in Jira, so that Jira makes sense to you, because this is technically incorrect. And so I'm going to give you the proper way to look at this. Ramesh does quarterly planning with Jira plans, timelines, epics, and stories. Perfect. So again, Ramesh, if you're not signing up for my every fourth Tuesday or every fourth Wednesday of the month course, which is Jira Advanced Roadmaps. I highly recommend you should check that one out because we do spend a lot of time like on quarterly planning. We're going to be building up for that. Okay. That's it for now. Let's just kind of get into it. Hello from San Diego. I used to live in San Diego, so cool. All right. So instead of jumping into Jira, we're actually going to pivot a little bit, and I'm going to jump into a Confluence whiteboard. And so today's conversation is going to start off a little bit more visual because I want you to understand. I'm going to try to describe to you how issue type hierarchy works inside of Jira. And I'm going to see if I can build a case to help you appreciate the infrastructure of Jira and how you can leverage it inside your Jira projects. Okay, so we're going to start off at the top of the hierarchy. So I'm going to start off here with a little square, and this is not scripted, by the way. I don't script any of my videos, so we're just going to go raw informational knowledge here, and we're going to start off with the epic. So if you are on the free or standard versions of Jira, and even premium for that matter, epic is usually the highest point where you start off at. You do have the ability to add something. You've been seeing in the chat here. We have a couple of people doing initiatives, right? So like Vanessa here is using initiatives. You do have the ability to add an initiative above the epic, but that is a slightly more advanced topic. And I'm going to try to keep it with the fundamentals and the thing that everybody's going to have, because everybody's going to have epic stories and subtasks. Not everybody's going to be privileged or even know to use initiatives, which again, I'm not trying to sound like a salesperson here, but definitely come to the Jira Advanced Roadmaps course, because that's where we'll focus a little bit more on initiatives. But for now, for this conversation, we're going to focus on epics, okay? So we got epics at the top, and then below that, I'm going to change this to a different color. We're going to have 3 or more issue types. We're going to have something called a story, right? If you're coming from an Agile pure perspective, you're going to refer to these as user stories. Spoilers, Jira doesn't have a user story directly, so its stories and user stories are very interchangeable, very, very much the same thing. We will then also have, and I'm trying to actually coordinate these a little bit. We will have a bug, and then we're going to have something else called a task, which I'm going to put over here as task, all right? And these are the default issue types. If you've ever used Jira, these colors should be looking very familiar to you, because this is how Jira is set up. We have an epic at the top. We have a story, a bug, or a task. These are the children, or these are the ones that are eligible to be a children of an epic, okay? And what we also have here is, I'm going to add some text here. We have a level 1. So I'm going to put actually level 1. We will then have a level 0 right here. And then, as you might have guessed it, we're going to have a level -1. And so the level -1, that's going to be our subtasks. And the way this works is these items here are allowed to have, and I'm going to do like a baby blue here, a subtask. Okay. All of these can have subtasks. Okay. And so this is, I think, where a lot of people get confused, because you think that the task here is the subtask, but it's not. The subtask plays a very special role in Jira. Whoa, I can't even pick the same colors. The subtask plays a very important role inside of this world of Jira, and it's a very crucial role, right? And subtasks can exist on their own. They have to be tied to like a story or a bug or a task, and they're on their own category. They're in this level -1 category, and they could be a pain in the butt too. So if you are going to use subtasks, you can't close your sprint with an open subtask. So you got to make sure you close out your subtasks. But this in general is the hierarchy for Jira. Now, whenever you add new issue types, so in here, I think we had somebody in here said, here we go. So we'll talk to this one. So you can create other issue types with standard issue types. So we're going to noodle on this for a little second. So if I go and create a new issue type, like a spike, right? So I'm going to come over here and add a spike. And let's just make this one, let's make it yellow, right? So if you add a new issue type like a spike, this is automatically going to be called a standard issue type, which is also AKA a level 0 issue type. And you can have as many of these as you want, but this is the hierarchy always. Always, always, always. It goes like this, where any level 0 issue type will always have a subtask underneath it. And will be eligible to be the child of an epic. You can't really mess with this structure too much. I mean, you do have the ability, if you're advanced, to change this, but I wouldn't mess with the structure a whole lot. Okay. Oh yeah, and then this is a great point from Bob. You can create custom level -1s as well. So if you wanted to, I've seen teams do something like this, where you take your subtask like this, and then you create another subtask over here on the side. Let me make, whoopsie, let me make this a little bit smaller here, so we can kind of fit them all in. And I can create like a risk issue type, and it can be of the type subtask type. So it'll be at the level -1. And anytime that you're discussing a level -1 issue, I just want to reiterate, you cannot, I repeat, you cannot create them just automatically. You hitting the create button in Jira will never allow you to create a subtask type. You have to always tie them to a story, a task, a bug, basically any of your level 0 issue types. So hopefully that's clear. And hopefully that helps you out a lot. So this is all possible. So now, as we think about our work, right? As we think about all the different things that we have to do at our day-to-day job, one of the first things that I like to help people with is like, you need to understand what is an epic, what is a story, what is a bug, what is a task, what is a spike, what is a subtask. It's important to understand, and that everybody in your team has a thorough understanding of this. Because even though this seems very basic, this has severe consequences in how you interact and utilize your Scrum board. Because when you get this wrong, when everything is a story, then that's when Jira is going to fail you. Let me correct that. That's when you're going to feel like Jira is going to fail you, because you're going to be frustrated because Jira is not going to work. You're not going to see the results that you were expecting to see from the tool. And it saddens me because a lot of people say, well, Jira sucks. Well, it's not Jira that sucks. It's just that you need to really understand the fundamentals of Jira, which is why we create these courses to begin with, to help you understand those fundamentals. Okay. And so that's what we're going to try to convey in this course here, is the fundamentals of work and how work gets tracked. Now we have a couple questions here. So Laxman says, unfortunately, we do not have task type, but everything like NFR and documentation are in the form of story for us. So yeah. So this is a great thought here from Laxman, right? Which is, you don't have to have any of these issue types. So you can actually configure this. You can get rid of bugs if you don't need a bug. You can get rid of your task if you don't need them. You don't have to add a custom one like a spike. I would not recommend you get rid of subtasks. I know a lot of teams just don't like them, which I'm okay with. I'm not a big fan of subtasks either, but you can actually get rid of them if you don't need them. So I would say, think about the type of work that you actually have and think about, what do you actually need? Some teams just want to do tasks, right? Some teams are so new and they're like, everything should just be a task. And so we just have tasks. Some teams just want to follow Agile in the purest form and they just have the user stories, right? So again, it just depends on when your team are, but it's important for you to understand what should be what. All right. Ronnie says, I wonder if Atlassian will allow custom ideas for JPD, like custom issue types. That's a good question. I do know right now that if you do create an idea, you can link it to any issue type, although I typically recommend somebody tying it to the epic, and it kind of behaves like an initiative, but it's not there yet. So I wouldn't play around too much with it yet. Any limit to the number of subtasks? I don't think so, but I will tell you that your Jira board, so if you're looking at a Scrum board in Jira, let's go back to Jira here. If you're looking at your Scrum board, there is a limit of 5,000 issues. So any Jira software project, let me get into my cowboys over here. Any Jira software project, or maybe even the kanban ones, have a limit of 5,000 issues. So if you have 5,000 tasks, you're going to use up all your bandwidth with just tasks. So I guess there is a limit if you think about it from that perspective, but it's not just for the subtasks, it's for all the issues that are in your board, and that limit is going to be 5,000 in Jira. Chad says, I can tell you that if you use AI to generate subtasks, it maxes out 10 out of 10. So that's a really good input and insight there. Haven't really been using Atlassian Intelligence all that much to create subtasks as of late. But if you are going to be leveraging that powerful feature, which I think you should, because it is pretty powerful, good to know that it maxes out at 10 at a time. But yeah, in theory, you can have an unlimited amount, up to 5,000. Okay, so Now back to our picture here, right? So one of the things that I wanted to first drive is you should understand this hierarchy, because too many people, way too many people, try to do this where they put the task underneath the story. It doesn't work that way. The task and the stories are siblings of each other. They are on the same row. So you have to respect this hierarchy. And mentally, you should structure your work to respect this hierarchy. Because if you try to put this down here, you're not going to yield the right results. There is no way for you to do this safely and clearly. Okay? A task can be linked. You can link these things together like this. So you can put up blocks and blocks by, or is related to relationship. You can definitely add links, but a task can never be the child of a story. This is illegal. This will never work. So if we try to put this in red and make it a little bit bolder, let me see if I can get it bolder here. This is a big X, big illegal stuff. You cannot, this is not going to work. Okay. The only path is to have your epic, your story, your task, your bug, your spike, any other standard issue level type, and then your subtasks below. Okay. So hopefully that's clear. That this is, again, rule number 1 of Jira here that I wanted to make sure I convey to you and help you understand, because it's very, very, very important. Okay. And we'll pause here again for questions. We have some questions here. Subtasks can still be children of epics, not easily like it used to be, but it can happen. Yes. So this is so KT, you are technically true. It is possible. It is technically possible for a subtask to be the child of an epic. 1, not recommended. And 2, Atlassian it makes you go through a couple of hoops to get there. And so I would not be doing it, because the UI natively isn't going to support it anyways. You have to trick it. You have to trick Jira into thinking that it's a subtask. There's a way to do it, but I would not endorse that behavior. The subtask of the epic is always going to be the story, the bug, the task, or the spike. And to be very clear, Jira kind of gets rid of these subtasks and epics now, and it's just parent, child, parent, child. So it's the child of an epic will always be a story, task, bug, any level 0 issue type. The child of a level 0 will always be any level -1. So typically a subtask. All right, Laxman says Scrum teams work on tasks, documentation, NFR, and spikes research type work items, besides functional user story items. Do you suggest estimating the tasks and spikes? So great questions, Laxman. I would say whenever your team is spending time in a sprint on something, they should estimate it. But that's one person's opinion. Again, go do your retrospectives. Go and talk to your team. See what makes sense. If your team is not making forward progress on your functional user stories because their task for documentation is taking up the entire sprint, you should be aware of that. And you should estimate that this task documentation is going to take me a half a sprint, so that you don't go in with false expectations. And so I would say everything for this course, it all depends. And you really have to just evaluate your team and see where you guys sit. Does Jira allow for you to do a legal move of adding a task under a story? No, because it's impossible. You can, I suppose, if you wanted to, you can get rid of this task and rename your subtask to just say task, and maybe that's a way to circumvent it. But you cannot demote. You cannot demote the task to a level -1, and a level 0. Anything that's a level 0 can just be level 0. So it needs to be up and down this chain, right? So this is Karen, it won't let you do it. Mamza, what workflow is this? I'll have to be replay gang. Not sure what that means, but we're not talking about workflows just yet. All right. Okay, we talked about that one. He's showing us proper workflow. Yeah, okay. All right, so Ronnie says, what's the best practice for what to put in the description of custom issue types? Okay, so great question. So when you go to Jira and you create a new issue type in here, and you have your description, so when you click on actions and you click on edit, or when you create a new one, there's a description here. I don't think it matters. I don't think it particularly matters, because only your Jira admins can see this stuff, I'm pretty sure. And to be quite honest, your team is going to provide their own description and their own meaning to each issue type that they use. So I wouldn't worry too much about this particular description, but what I would worry is the part that we're going to talk about next is we need to start defining what these things are, right? We need to define um, we need to define our issue types, right? But first, I wanted to make sure you understood the hierarchy. So once you have this done, once you kind of understand how this works, the next thing I encourage you to do is to create a table. Now, I'm not sure how I'm going to create a table here. I'm just going to put something like this, where I'm going to recreate all my issue types here, right? And so I would do this next exercise with your team. So once you figured out, hey, we have a story, we have our task, we have all of our issue types, right? Once you figured out which ones you're going to go with, then I would recommend that you lay out a table and define each one, right? I'm not going to spend too much time coloring them all because that's going to take me forever. But I would then spend time defining what is an epic, right? And so on and so forth. What's a story? What's a task? What's a bug? What's a subtask? And folks, I'm going to give you some rules, right? I'm going to give you some insight on how Jira works so that when you're defining these things, it becomes a little bit easier. But the next exercise that we're going to basically focus on here for the last 30 minutes is defining these issue types, because it's very, very important that we understand the different types of work that we have, that we understand fundamentally when something is assigned to us, or when somebody asks us, hey, can you deliver this feature or can you fix this problem? Is it a task? Is it a bug? Is it a story? Is it an epic? Is it a subtask? It's very, very important to have a solid understanding of this, because if you mess that up, right, this is where you run into risks of work not being completed correctly or not being completed within the bounds of the sprint, because you had a false narrative as to what these issue types really were or are or should be. Okay. And we're going to start with epic. We're going to start at the epic because I like to start top down, and a couple of disclaimers, a couple of rules that I want you to understand of what is an epic. So the first thing you need to know is that unlike in Agile, right? So if you're a certified Scrum Master, what is it? PSM, Professional Scrum Master, right? There's a couple of Scrum Master level certifications out there. If you've taken them, then you know very well that an epic is just a very big user story, right? An epic is a very big user story. That's just the definition of an epic. But in Jira, while that is still very true, it's way more powerful. And so when you're inside of Jira, when you go into your Jira project and you go to create an epic, right? It's important that you understand the behaviors of epics, okay? So if I create an epic here, so I'm going to create this epic for class, okay? I'm just going to create this epic here. When I create this epic, you're not going to see the epic in the board, right? So the epic will not be shown in the board. That's rule number one. Rule number two, the epic will not be visible in the backlog, okay? And so you can look through here. Oh boy, I really got to turn that feature off, right? But as you look through here, you're going to see that our epic that we just created isn't visible. And that's by design. And so the only place where you really truly see the epic, really truly see it, is in the timeline. So the timeline up here, you see our epic here for the very first time, epic for class. Now, this is not the only place where you see the epic. You actually do get to see the epic in the backlog and the active sprint. I'm going to show you those in a minute. But where you truly see the epic for all its glory, right, and its name and all that information, the key, stuff like that, it's going to be here in the timeline view. And so you want to think of an epic as a really big task, a really big user story, just like the way Agile does. But keep in mind that work, right, the tasking, the assignment of this epic to actually drive the delivery of that epic will not happen in Jira. It will, at least it won't happen in your backlog. It's not going to happen in a sprint. So you want to go into defining your epic with that in mind, that epics by nature, by the design of Jira, especially if you're in a Scrum board, these rules do not really apply if you're on a Kanban board. But since this is Jira for Scrum Masters, we're going to assume that we're inside of a Scrum project. All right. So when you create your epics, they will not be visible. Okay. So keep that in mind. So if you try to find in the backlog, you try to find your epic, you're going to be searching for a really, really long time because they're not there. However, that not all hope is lost. You do get to see the epic up here. So there's an epic panel or epic pane, and you can show it. So you can slide the slider and you will see a panel with your epics, and you will see the epic here. And really, this epic, though, is really there for filtering. So if I click on this, it'll hide everything except the children that belong to that epic. So it's really more of a bucketization, categorization of the issues, right? Because if you do happen to have 5,000 issues on your board or in your backlog, that could be a lot of noise to filter through. And so the epic here is going to be great for classification. So when we go to define our epic, right, the epic really needs to be like a really big task story, right? And my general recommendation, right, is think of this as like, we'll take at a minimum, loosely, right? All this is loosely. Everything I'm telling you is very loosely. The entire sprint, right? It could be broken down, to smaller stories, tasks to be worked on by your team. Ideally, well, we'll leave that one off, right? But ideally, you want the stories to be part of your board, but they don't actually have to be either. But this is how I want you to think about your epics, right? So think of the work, right? If somebody asks you to do something like add a shopping cart functionality to your website, well, that might be an epic, because adding a shopping cart is an involved process, right? You got to do the catalog. You have to have some database connection. You got to accept the payment. You got to be able to update the quantity and the quantity of the product, right? So there's a lot of things going on. And so you really want to think about when you're looking at your work and somebody says, "Hey, Alex, can you add a new shopping cart to our website?" Well, that definitely is not a story. This is not something you're going to be able to finish in a sprint. Okay. And this is where you start using epics or maybe even initiatives, because the work just gets bigger and bigger and more broader the higher you go up on the hierarchy. But because we're trying to keep things simple, we would probably have multiple epics for our shopping cart to describe different key functionalities that need to be built. But this is the general rule of thumb. So we'll pause here to see if there's any questions and see where we're at with people. So Frank says, let's see. Raj says, can we show defects under stories like subtasks in a Scrum board? So defects is a very broad term. If by defect you mean bug, then no. Okay. The bug is a level 0 issue type that, very much like the task, they get treated at the same level. So they have to be siblings. They cannot be parent-child. You do have the ability to create a custom defect subtask type that can then happen. This is totally possible and doable. I wouldn't do it. I like to track it at the bug level, but you can definitely link a bug and a story together. This is possible as well, just to show the relationship. Maybe you have a bug that blocks a story, but that's usually how I would treat that. But to do this, illegal. And then you're probably better off creating a defect subtask type. Karen says, I assign myself my Jira board admin the epics, then create the task under it for the work to be assigned to different. Yes. So Karen, perfect. That's exactly how we want. That's the behavior that Atlassian intends. So the epic is the bucket. It's the container that will keep it all together. So the epic is a very powerful thing, right? And so epics are usually, again, if you're coming in from a pure agile perspective, you might not care for epics too much, but in Jira, epics are really good from an organizational perspective. So great use case there, and that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. Karen says, my epics are in the backlog. So that most likely tells me that, well, it tells me a couple of things, but most likely it will tell me that you are not, my friend, in a Scrum board. So can you confirm that outside of your backlog, you have the word active sprint instead of Kanban board. If it says Kanban board, then you're in the wrong style of project. We need to be in a Scrum project because again, this is for Scrum masters. So you should not see epics. You in this list here, you should not see any purple lightning bolts at all. If you do, again, you're most likely in a Kanban board. And in fact, I can prove it to you. If I go to a Kanban one over here and I create an epic here, so I'm going to create an epic here, epic for Karen. Oops, sorry, Karen, I misspelled your name, right? But if I create an epic and I put it under Karen and I go to my backlog here, you'll see that I do have epics in my backlog, but that's because we are in a Kanban board. So you want to make sure you're picking the right one. And for if as a recap from last month, in case you've missed last session, highly recommend, folks, if you missed last session, again, I can't encourage you enough to go on my YouTube channel and subscribe. You need to subscribe. You need to follow along because there's just so many courses on here. But if you go to the YouTube channel and you go to last month's training here, then I'm just going to drop last month's video. So again, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're following along here because we got 48 of these sessions. Well, 12 just for this course, right? But you'll see how to set up your projects. What's the difference between Kanban? What's the difference between Scrum? So definitely follow along. And while you're there, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button wherever that subscribe button's at, because lots of information in this channel. Okay, next question. Laxman says, Atlassian is considering to change the terminology of issue type. Yes, unfortunately, and one of my latest, most popular videos, 563 views so far in 2 days. One of my more popular videos is that issues, and the word issues type is going away. And you're going to have either work items or tasks. I don't know how Atlassian is going to let you pick, but their material that I'm seeing is going to be either or. I'm not happy. I think that's a bad move, but we are here nonetheless. Bob says, I like putting my epics in a dedicated Kanban board to visualize progress on those epics. So yes, so that is a great recommendation, great advice from our very own King Bob here, where since you're bored in Jira, I'm going to switch back over to my Cowboys over here. Since your board will not show epics, you cannot move the epic through the statuses. The board will not show you epics in here. What you are allowed to do is create a new board of the type Kanban. I usually pick the second option here. And just call it like board for epics so that you can visually see their progress through your workflow. So I'm going to add it to this same project here of mobile. Let's make sure we added it to the right one, mobile. Here we go. And when you do this, when you create this board, you're going to see everything. So then we have to modify the board to edit the filter query so that instead of it showing us everything, instead of it showing us every issue, we're just going to put an issue type equals epic. And when we do that, and I hit save, hit search, and then save, and I go back to my board, you will see that we only have epics now. And this is a great way to visually see your epics and how they progress. Now, as a more advanced thing, so what I typically do, right? So I actually charge you money to help you. So if you need help with this, in that link tree, I'll drop it again. But I do have one-on-one help. So if you're like, Alex, what the heck are you talking about? What is this? What's going on? Fret or worry minor. You have the ability to purchase time with me if you want some help, some one-on-one help, and I'll walk you through all this in a more private and more specific to your use case manner. But the workflows for each issue type, which I don't think we're going to discuss in this series. I can't remember the series right now, but I don't think I have it in my agenda to talk about workflows at any point. But the workflows for your epic can be different than the workflows for your story. So if you have a different life cycle that your epic should follow, doing this approach where we create a board just for the epic is great because now I can customize my columns to reflect the workflow for my epic and leave the workflow for my stories alone. Okay, so that's some good things there. Wow, we have quite a lot of questions in this chat here. So I hear that Atlassian's considering changing the, yes, so we definitely talked about that. Yeah, so so for this case, Laxman, right? tasks and the sibling tasks and just subtasks, I think Atlassian is just going to confuse the heck out of people. This is why I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Atlassian changing this. I don't think Atlassian. I think Atlassian is thinking about new market, right? New people that are not in Jira, but anybody and everybody that's in Jira today, when you move to a task type and you have your tasks and you have your subtasks and you're trying to figure out the relationship of everything, it's just going to cost so much mayhem. I am not looking forward to it. But if you need any help, again, that link tree, one-on-one help is available if you need me to walk you through it. Atlassian is moving to rename issues to work. So from what I've seen, it's going to be work or tasks. I think that's the last thing I saw. All right, Karen says, good idea. Yeah, so I just showed you how to do that. Karen says, because I'm assuming the demo that I just showed you. And then she says, haha, let me go to my Scrum board. That's why I'm here, to learn the difference between Scrum and what I'm using Kanban. Yeah, so perfect. I love, I love telling a story. When I have two boys, and one of them, when he was small, like under 2 years old, maybe even into like 3 or 4 years old, he used to suffer from a lot of ear infections. But we didn't know. We were new parents, and we didn't know why he had a lot of ear infections or why he was always sick, until we found out that there's this ear infection problem that he had. And so I remember walking into the doctor one time, and as the moment she opened the door, the moment this doctor walked in, she knew immediately. She didn't even ask us anything. She didn't look at us. She just opened and entered the room, and she knew immediately that my son had an ear infection. And I like to think that I'm at that level of my skills in Jira where I can hear the description of a problem and prescribe to you your problem or your solution, because I know exactly the behavior you're experiencing, because I know how Jira works. So anyway, that's a little personal anecdote. Let me know if you guys like these kind of stories. I wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more personal details on these. But if you are interested in more of these personal things, definitely check out the Jira Life, because we definitely go a lot more personal there. Let's see. So Orla says, essentially, Scrum boards involve sprint. I'm assuming you mean sprints. Yes, sprints is the next comment. And Kanban is just a progress tracker. Yes. So that is something for you to consider. Again, watch that video from watch this video over here on Scrum Project Board Basics. But if your intention is to have a sprint, the only place in Jira, based on the hundreds and hundreds of project templates that are out there, the only place to do that is in a software project of the type Scrum. If you don't have that, you're not going to get very far. You have to have those two right there in order to be able to do your sprints. Ronnie says, Atlassian, if you're out there, slow roll with all your changes. Atlassian, I think, does watch these from time to time. These trainings are technically officially sponsored by Atlassian in some degree or some way, right? They promote that the courses out to people. But yeah, Atlassian, if you're watching, we're not overly eager or in too much of a hurry to jump into this new world that you're creating for us. We like where we are right now. All right, Tommaso says, I'm not sure if you have already discussed this, but how do you manage small tasks that are not directly linked to an epic? Do you suggest using individual tasks without relationship to an epic? Great question. So usually when I tell people, right, it is perfectly okay. It is perfectly okay for you to have a story. Whoopsie, wrong button. It is perfectly okay for you to have a story that just kind of lives on its own, that is not tied to an epic. I think a lot of times there's a dichotomy here, right? There's a balance that you have to do, where I think a lot of people hear me say, hey, well, the epic is the container. You should put your stories and your tasks onto the container. And then you tip so heavily to one side where every story needs to be tied to an epic, or every bug needs to be tied to an epic, right? And there's a healthy balance. There is opportunities. There are scenarios where a story or a task can just live, right? But my challenge to you is, why does that task or story exist? Because another way to look at the epic, another way to think of the epic is that, and I'm going to write this one here for you guys, right? The epic gives the story purpose. It links the hierarchy, right? It says, this is not just a standalone thing that needs to get done. It's part of something bigger. And the epic is there to give you that purpose. And it's a philosophical way of looking at this, but I think one that you might appreciate. Because when you just have tasks, when you just have stories on your board, then I feel like you're wandering with an A, right? You just you're just busy. You're working on things. I'm not saying that the things you're working on are not important, but you're just working on stuff. You're working through work, and giving purpose justifies the work. It justifies the effort, the energy that you're going to spend into working on this stuff, right? And so yeah, so maybe not always do you need to have purpose. There's one-offs, but I'm of the opinion, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm of the opinion that if I'm paying my employees money, right? Because it's not cheap to build software, it's not cheap to run a company, right? Salaries are very much a real cost for a company. And if I'm tracking the tasks, then I don't want my team to just be busy, right? I don't want my team to just be doing work for the sake of work, because that's no fun, right? Like, we want to have intent, we want to have purpose, we want to be operating and hitting goals and marching towards milestones, right? Which again, we're going to talk about all this in this course here. And I'm a huge fan of tying them back up to your epic, because again, it will give you that purpose. It'll give you that sense of direction of like, okay, so I'm not just adding a button that tracks, or I'm not just adding a number in a shopping cart that tracks quantity. I'm doing this as you can appreciate the bigger purpose of why you're adding that inventory or quantity tracker for that story. So again, you don't have to. This is totally allowable, but I like to see the correlation. And I think it's important that if you're a scrum master and you're not using epics and you're just assigning tasks to your team, if you want your team to have more accountability, more pride in their work, try to connect it to the epics, right? Because then they'll start seeing the bigger picture. And if you can connect your epics to initiatives that are like now across different teams, well, you really start to get that sense of ownership, right? Because now you start to see the bigger picture, and you start to see how your little line of code that you're going to be writing all the way down here at the bottom level as an individual contributor, how it plays in the bigger like goals of the company and whatnot. So again, food for thought, little philosophical, but definitely want to let you know there that that's out there. Okay, I am getting totally lost in all these comments. So with 15 minutes, can I please start from scratch? Probably not, Sanjay, but you can definitely rewatch the recording and go back to the beginning because I got 15 minutes, 10 minutes to get through the rest of this material. And there's a couple more things that I want to talk about. Okay, so as we finish defining, I'm going to take my text box here and go, what is a story? Right? So what should then a story be? Well, this is where I like to invite you to look at invest, right? So I'm not trying to get you to invest into the Bitcoin. Don't worry, it's not going to be a crypto scam. But I want you to invest into this agile terminology of a good user story should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. Okay. When you're writing your stories, you should be influenced, you should be governed by this principle here. Because oftentimes, and I would say like 95% of the times, and I'm not exaggerating that number, but a lot of the times, what happens is you have people that create a story, but it really should be like an epic because the scope is just so big. It's not independent. It's not valuable, or maybe it is valuable, but it's super valuable. It's not small. I think this is really, if I had to like zoom in on a letter, it's small. You want your stories to be small, right? Small stories are going to help you out a lot because the smaller the story, right? The smaller the story, the higher the probability that you're going to be able to complete that story within a sprint. Too many times you're trying to boil the ocean in a story, right? Your story is to boil the ocean. It is really, really tremendously hard to boil the ocean. So take a cup, scoop some water out of the ocean, and boil that. That is going to be more successful. So when you're thinking of stories, you want it to be value added, right? So usually what I tell my team is you want this to be business valuable, right? Um, this correlates to cash, money, 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 right? Don't make stories unless if they're not gonna provide value or move the business forward, then why work on it, right? But this is a story. right? And then should be small enough to fit in a sprint. Okay. This is my general guidance here. Because again, if you go above this, if your story is really big and it's not even valuable, then what are we doing here, right? So then naturally though, that takes us to what's a task, right? And this is where I love having this conversation because there's no right answer to this, but I love having conversations with teams when I engage with you and having this conversation of like, okay, Alex, so we get the story, business value, but then what the heck is a task? And then how does the task relate to the subtask? Like, what's the difference? It's like so confusing, right? And I can see everybody yanking their hair out of their head. And so the recommendation that I have for you, right, is that this is valuable to the team, right? Maybe not to the business, right? Maybe not to your customer, not to the end user, but to the team, it's valuable. It's creating a new database. It's buying a resource. It's whatever you want it to be that's not going to be value to the business, right? But it is something that you need to do, something that needs to get done, right? And let me add these, right? So for both of these, explain what needs to be built. And then from end user perspective, right? This one also explains what needs to be done. What needs to be done from team perspective. Doesn't have to be technical, right? And then this one up here, the epic, explains a really big what needs to be done. Really big, okay? Hopefully you guys are all following along here. So naturally, we'll skip bug for now. Naturally, you're like, well, what the heck is a subtask then? How do we use the subtasks, right? And so let's define that one. So what is a subtask? So a subtasks, we're going to actually start with the bottom, right? Explains how the parent needs to be completed, right? So I'm going to delete this last line sentence here. Let me explain that for a second. So everything else is a what. What needs to be built? What are we doing? What are we creating? The subtasks is the how, right? So think of this as the steps to complete parent, a checklist for the parent, right? Think of it from that perspective. And I think you're going to be sitting pretty on understanding the differences between the stories and the tasks and the subtasks, because these are small, right? And my 2 cents, right? My 2 cents, like minutes to no more than a couple hours, right? So if it's taking you half a day to complete a subtask, it's probably not a subtask. It's probably a task. It's probably a story, right? And so take that as guidance to kind of define what these things are, right? And then finally, we'll start off with our bug. So what is a bug, right? And so quite simply put, I think the bug's the easiest one. Like something didn't go right, right? That's as easy as I can describe, right? Something that needs to be fixed. Now, when or how, severity, we'll talk about that in future episodes of this course or future courses. But yeah, so I like this one too. A bug can be unplanned work, although all work can be unplanned. I call it operational work, right? Reactive work, right? Work that you didn't wake up in the morning and it probably wasn't on your plate, and you're like, okay, you didn't anticipate for this bug to exist, right? And so that's usually how I think about bugs. But this, my friends, there's a good description, right? It's a good footprint, a baseline for you to then run with it, right? Now use this as a baseline. Have a retrospective. Go and do your retrospectives. And if you don't have an ability to do retrospectives, use that link, right? Catapult Labs has been generous enough to provide us here with 3 months extension, right? So you get 3 months free if you're on the monthly billing. You get 25% off if you buy it annually, or if you're on data center, they're also offering you 25% off. So check out that link in the description. There's a couple of promo codes down there, but it's so important, folks, that you have a retrospective and talk about this stuff. When you do a retrospective, this conversation, what is a story? What's a bug? What's a bug? What's a task? How are we doing this? Are we doing this correctly? Are we using the right board type? Should we switch over to Scrum? Should we do story points? Should we alter our story point values? Those conversations, they happen here in your retrospective. So for you to be successful, this is not just a set and forget. You have to continuously do your retrospectives and look back. And this is why, again, I'm so thankful that Catapult Labs has been generous enough to sponsor us for this episode, because it's such a valuable thing to have. And keep in mind, again, against my sponsor, right? You don't have to use like a pen and paper will work, a whiteboard will work, but this keeps it tight inside of Jira. So give them a try. Links are in the description. Again, special thank you to Catapult Labs for sponsoring this episode and making this possible. But I highly recommend for you all to do that. So this is going to bring us basically down to the end. So exclusive offers for you guys to be aware of. Number one, again, those links down in the description, use them. They are here. So here's the codes. I'm just going to drop them in here just so you have them. Let me see if I can actually put them in the chat. And see if it doesn't complain. But go and get a trial going and then use those codes here to get some either 25% off or 3 months for free, depending on which plan you're on. I also recommend, I have a Udemy course available. So actually, I might have to hold up on the Udemy real quick. Let me make sure that it's up. I thought I took care of everything, but apparently I totally forgot to extend this this code. But essentially, if you want 30 minutes of 15 minutes of my time, if you want to ask me questions, I have the ability to essentially create a what am I trying to say here? Start date March 22nd. Okay, this looks good. All right, sorry, I'm just creating a code right now. Create coupon. Okay. Oh boy, I created a code. I don't know that that's correct. But go here, go to this link here. We'll update the link here. I should have probably used a better name. But if you go to that link here, and I'll put it in this chat here, totally messed that up. We'll fix that for next time. But if you put that promo code there, you will get the course. It's normally $90. You get it for $12.99. You also then, as part of the bonuses for today, you get a couple things. One, you get 15-minute session with me. So if you want to ask questions, if you want me to take a look at your Jira because you're like, am I doing this right? Take advantage of that. It's normally a $50 offer. So you're getting this for just $12.99. The other thing is I am working on a Scrum Master course that I've been dragging my feet on. But if you want that course, when I do drop it on Udemy, you buy this course. It's a fundamentals course, very basic, very beginners. But I will also give you that course once that course drops. So this is for today only. So it is expired. So if you want to take advantage of it, make sure you use that link here and purchase that course so that you can get 15 minutes from me. And disclaimer for everybody else who has purchased it, because quite a few have taken advantage of this. The message comes from Udemy. So keep look for your emails. I'm sending you messages through Udemy. So you will get a message from Udemy, not from me directly, but from Udemy. And in there, we're trying to schedule time. So if you have purchased the course and you feel like I haven't followed up with you, check your mailbox, check Udemy, go log into Udemy, check your messages there, because I have been sending you messages through Udemy. So make sure you go take advantage of them there. Finally, we do have a lot of classes, folks. This is class number 2. So we are still at the beginning of this. And so we have the ability here to really get deeper into these sessions. So here we are. This is our column right here. Next time we're talking about timeline and dates, decomposing work in your backlog. And so we're going to get deeper and deeper and deeper into this. So these are all the things we're going to be covering in this course. So use that link, sign up for the rest of them. We have 12 total courses for the Scrum Masters. I also have Jira admins. I have Jira for beginners, and I have the Jira Advanced roadmap. So if you're interested in any of that, sign up for those courses. And then finally, if you're walking out of here and you're like, Alex, this is the best class I've ever taken in my life, thank you so much. I have a link tree. There's also a super chat donation. So if you want to do donations, that's also available. But more importantly, just connect with me on LinkedIn. Become a connection. Follow me. I'm always talking about all things Atlassian. I have a lot of involvements. I'm always like in a webinar or something. I'm going to be at Team 25. I have a session at Team 25. So if you want to do one of these live in person with me in front of you and you're coming to Team 25, make sure you sign up for that one, because that one's going to be cool. We're going to have an opportunity to do one of these similar courses live in person. So again, definitely sign up, connect with me, send me messages. If you need one-on-one help, that link tree is going to have one-on-one. If you need more than like an hour, if you need 10 hours, 20 hours, I'm more than happy to help you out. So That's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, special thank you to Catapult Labs for making this possible. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.